Welcome everybody to the Fantasy Football Endgame. Welcome back to our loyal viewers. First of all, if you haven't joined our Discord, go ahead and do it now. Check the link in the description below. We had a lot of new members join. We appreciate that. And what we're doing is we're checking out the chat and answering your questions. That's right. Your questions that you're throwing on our Discord channel, we're going to answer some right now, right here. So let's get right to it. So first question that we had from one of our users, Chris, is when should you go running back to start a draft? And when do you pivot and maybe go with a high-end wide receiver or a tight end? So where do you feel is kind of like the right place where you think I can start two RBs?
Well, I'll say right off the bat, if you're in a standard scoring, any kind of non-PPR league, you should absolutely go RB, and probably even go RB, maybe even RB by 5, honestly. But I know not many of you play in standard scoring leagues, so let's talk about the PPR league. So I would say in a half PPR league, I would definitely lean towards RB. I would 100% commit to that because you don't want to, if running backs are flying off the board and you're taking a guy like, I don't know, Joe Mixon or J.K. Dobbins or Clyde Edwards-Helaire instead of a guy like Diggs or Adams because you want to get RB, obviously don't do that. But in a normal half PPR league, I'd probably start RB. When we're talking about full PPR, I think the only time I would really do it is if, a first round running back fell to me in the second round and I just couldn't pass on that player, or in maybe a 10-team shallow league where you don't have to start many players and it's very likely you'll still get stud wide receivers after going RB. So this isn't really a question I can just say like, oh, in this situation go RB, and in this situation don't. It's a little, gray areas, but those are some of my kind of rules that I would follow to go RB.
Yeah, it's so hard. You hate to say it depends. I mean, it really does because every draft is different. How many running backs are going off the board in the first round? Well, in almost every mock draft and draft that we've seen so far this preseason, it's been at least 9 running backs go in the first round in a 12-team league. So going RB in the first or second round is almost a given because if you don't, you're missing out on one of those high-end guys. Okay, so when do you go with the running back in the second round? And I think what you kind of mentioned earlier is right, is where's that tier break? So Najee Harris is a guy who absolutely should be going in really the first round, honestly, based on what we're projecting him to do. One of the few workhorse backs. And if he's available in the second round, you grab him. Now, guys who shouldn't be going in the second round, and you should absolutely take a wide receiver, a stud wide receiver, or maybe a high-end tight end like Waller, Kelce instead of guys like you mentioned Joe Mixon. Just a lot of red flags there. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, even before the injury, and I guess he's okay now. Who knows? But he should not be a second-round pick. Some people taking him way too high. DeAndre Swift, there's no way. Okay, so some of those running backs that aren't sure things, you pass on those guys. All right. Now, if it's a standard league, you prefer a running back, but don't overestimate, the running back that you take second is going to win your league. So don't fear that you're going to miss out on a second running back either, just because everyone else is taking running backs. That's when you can load up on wide receivers. So I would say if you feel comfortable with the fact that the running back that is left is clearly better than the wide receiver who is left, then you can go running back. But again, there's not that many guys who for sure will be more productive than a Stephon Diggs, a Calvin Ridley, right? A Devontae Adams, a Tyreek Hill. So to me, more often than not, I'm just not going RB unless I can get a guy, like I said, maybe a Najee Harris in the second round. All right, let's move on to our next question here. And the question is, who do you think the 1.4 should be? Now, of course, this is making the assumption that the guys we think should be the top 3 pick are off the board. So obviously CMC is number 1. Number 2 is going to probably be Dalvin Cook. And number 3, more likely than not, going to be Alvin Kamara. So if that's the case, Chris, who's 4th for you?
Well, I don't want to spoil our upcoming running back rankings video that you can check out next week, but I'll spoil this one for you. For me, it's Saquon Barkley. I've been very high on Saquon Barkley all year. And look, the closer we get to the season, the more confident I'm feeling that he's going to be out there week 1. And not only is he going to be out there week 1, he's going to be out there week 1, full Saquon Barkley snaps. And I'll tell you the latest thing is this week, he is practicing in the joint practices against the New England Patriots. That means He's getting tackled by other players on the other team. And Joe Judge said he has not ruled out Saquon Barkley playing in the final preseason game. They're ramping him up and they're happy with what they've seen. And the reason why I think this is so good is because Joe Judge all offseason has said, well, I don't know. Oh, we'll take it slow. And now he's saying he might play in the last preseason game. Like, that's a huge difference. Oh, and the last thing, if you noticed in the last preseason game, the Giants starters didn't play, but Devontae Booker played, and he played a lot. Do you think if the Giants were going to roll into week 1 with Devontae Booker as the guy, they would have played him for a half or more than a half or whatever it was he played? No way. They would have saved him for that game. So to me, all the signs point to Saquon Barkley being out there week 1, 100% ready to go. He's actually my number 3, but in this instance, I'll put him at number 4.
All right. So, look, first let me say I agree with everything you said about Barkley. I think he'll be fine. And even if he does, for some reason, miss week 1 or is limited week 1, who cares? I mean, really, that you should not be caring about week 1. You should be caring about week 14, 15, 16. Okay. I have Kamara as the number 3, but here's where I differ. And I get all the concerns, but to me, I have to go with Derrick Henry. I get the fact that even last year, rushing for 2,000 yards, leading the league in touchdowns, he still wasn't the fantasy RB1. Okay, I get that. I get that at some point his body is potentially going to break down with all these carries. Maybe this year, maybe next year, maybe 10 years from now, who knows? But at some point it's going to happen. I get the fact that, well, maybe a new offensive coordinator, they have Julio Jones in town. Maybe they don't run him into the ground as much. Those are all legitimate concerns, but you know what? We said a lot of this stuff last year. Derrick Henry seems to just be the exception to a lot of rules. And I just feel like he's the guy that you need to target there just because he is still probably, in terms of just pure rushing, going to be the most productive back in the league. So in a full PPR league, is Saquon Barkley going to catch more passes? Of course he is. Is he going to score more fantasy points at the end of the year? I just don't know. Because injury concerns aside, it's the Giants. I have a hard time putting faith in the Giants offense at this point. There's just a lot of question marks there to me that are bigger than the question marks for Henry. So to me, Henry is still the guy. I know the whole thing about, you don't win your draft in the first round, but you can lose it. I don't feel like you can lose with Henry. I'm not saying you're going to lose with Barkley, but still, at this point, the number 4 pick, I still lean towards Henry. Number 5, I'll take Barkley, though. All right, next question here. Now, we did talk about this earlier in a video about Travis Kelce is a first-rounder pretty much everywhere. What does that do, though, to your build? So the question here specifically is in a 10-team PPR redraft where you have a quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 receivers, and a tight end, and 1 flex. Where do you take Kelce? All right, we're talking about a 10-team league, and a lot of us play 12-teamers, but 10 teams is actually a little more common, especially when you're playing ESPN, Yahoo, the more popular platforms. So, Chris, Kelce, is he a first-rounder there? That makes him a top 10 pick in that kind of format.
Oh, in that format, he is absolutely a first-rounder because kind of like what I said with the RB question with the 10-teamer, you can take Travis Kelce in the first round, still get a very good running back, maybe even get 2 very good running backs, and still get 2 to 3 very good wide receivers after that. So taking Kelce early in a format like that, I don't think hurts your build much at all. I'm not saying take him, in the top 5, but I think if you're in the second half of the draft and maybe you don't like the running backs that are on the board and you're looking at Kelce or one of those receivers, I would absolutely take Travis Kelce in that format.
So generally, I'm not taking Kelce in the first round if it's not a tight end premium league. But in a 10-team league, you're right, it's different because you think about it, to fill out those 2 starting running back slots, you only need to look at the top 20 running backs that are available, and you should feel good about 2 of those guys at least, unless somebody goes running back crazy and wants to start with their flex. Well, they're putting themselves at a disadvantage. But yeah, in a 10-team league, I'm more likely to load up at each position rather than stacking depth at receiver, right? Where a lot of times we'll go 3, 4 receivers before you even get your second running back, before you get your starting quarterback or your tight end. Okay, it's just the player pool gets more shallow. So yeah, in a 10-team PPR redraft league, I would say after the first 8 running backs are off the board, I'm okay taking Kelce at 9 or 10. In a 12-team league, or if there's 2 flexes, to me, I'd rather wait until the turn and get him maybe 13, 14, 15 in that range. He probably won't be available. Now, along that same line of thinking, as far as tight end, where do you take Darren Waller or George Kittle as opposed to maybe getting a high-end wide receiver? Because again, if you take one of those tight ends early, that means you're sacrificing a guy like a DK Metcalf, a Calvin Ridley, one of those, late second, mid-second round. So where do you weigh that?
Yeah, this is definitely a tougher question than the Kelce one. I think for me, for Darren Waller, I'll take him at the 2-3 turn based on who's there. If there's 2 wide receivers I just think have top 5, top 10 potential, I won't take them. But I'll take him there. And I'll definitely take Darren Waller if he falls, mid, late 3rd round. That's almost an auto pick for me with Darren Waller because he almost is a high-end wide receiver that just happens to have a tight end designation. As far as Kittle goes, I like Kittle a lot. I think he's going to have a great season this year. I feel more comfortable taking Kittle mid-second, late 3rd in drafts where the wide receivers there, you're looking more at like guys like Mike Evans, Amari Cooper, Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp. And even though I really like those wide receivers, they're probably not going to finish top 5, maybe not even top 10 this year. Whereas getting the top 3 tight end, George Kittle, can still give your team a significant advantage. So Waller, 2-3 turn, depending on who's there, but definitely mid to late second is an auto pick for me. Kittle, I'll think about him in the mid to late 3rd, depending on the other wide receivers, but I think that's great value for him as well.
So I kind of said this before, and I'll say my philosophy on tight end this year. I'm probably either striking early. By early, I mean Travis Kelce. If I get him in the early 2nd round, like I said, not the 1st round. If he's there in the 2nd round, I take him. And if it's the late 2nd round, I might take Darren Waller if I'm happy with what I think is going to come back to me in the 3rd round. I mean late, like 2nd to last or last pick of the 2nd round. Like if I started at the 1 or the 2 spot. If I'm not striking early at tight end, I'm either getting my guy TJ Hawkinson, right, round 5 or 6, or I'm just waiting. And then you get a guy like Logan Thomas or somebody later on, and then you just don't worry about tight end. Okay, to me, I'm kind of backing off of George Kittle. We don't know who the quarterback's going to be. It's going to flip-flop back and forth. They have a stronger running game. They have a lot more running backs they can depend on this year. Deebo Samuel might actually stay healthy this year. I just don't see Kittle putting up the kind of numbers he did a couple of years ago. So I'm kind of staying away from him just because I would rather have the high-end wide receiver than George Kittle. Most of the time, I won't take Waller. But I say that, and I'm in so many leagues that there's some places I just try it. I take Darren Waller in the 2nd round, and I'm not unhappy with it. So generally speaking, I'm passing on those guys. I'd rather have TJ Hawkinson a couple rounds later. Or I'm just going to wait on tight end completely, and I'm really going to load up on wide receiver. All right, now let's talk about running backs one more time. This is an interesting question. Which running back do you think has the best chance to overcome a bad situation and be fantasy relevant? So we're talking about guys, of course, on bad teams or in committees. So I'll let you take a stab at this first. A running back that we think is in a bad situation that might actually turn out to be good.
Well, I'm not sure how deep to go on this because this is my forte. This is what I love. I love drafting these guys, right? This is like my brand. Drafting running backs who people don't think are very good in bad situations. That's my brand. I'm going to tell you the one I'm drafting the most right now and I'm the highest on right now. And the thing about these type of situations is they change so often that if you asked me this question in week 3, or if you asked me this question 2 months ago, I'd probably give you a different answer. But right now, my answer is going to be Ty Johnson of the New York Jets. Look, if you watch our Panic Players videos, we're going to talk about Michael Carter. You should be panicking on Michael Carter. Michael Carter might come through down the stretch, but it's not going to be early in the year. It looks like it's going to be Tevin Coleman and Ty Johnson to start that backfield. And I don't believe Tevin Coleman has a lot left. And guess what? Ty Johnson, he's kind of like a Raheem Mostert. He's like a big play burst guy. Yeah, he's not a guy. You give him the ball 20 times, he might only pick up 3 yards on 15 of those carries, but on the other 5, he's gonna make some huge plays, take one to the house, and you're gonna live with it. And I think the Jets and this offense is going to be better than people think. I think he's going to fit in perfectly with this offense. And like I said, I just don't think Tevin Coleman has much left in the tank anymore. So for me, Ty Johnson is a guy I'm drafting ever. I think he has a chance to become fantasy relevant very early in the season. I guess what most people would consider a bad situation.
Yeah, a bad situation could be on a bad team. So let me get that out of the way first. Houston Texans, no, I'm avoiding that entire backfield, that entire team, honestly. There's just no reason to be interested in any of them. Phillip Lindsay has kind of become a trendy sleeper, but you know what? He could be an effective runner once in a while, but he is terrible in pass protection. He doesn't catch the ball very well. He will not play in third downs. He's not going to have very much value, especially in PPR leagues. And then David Johnson is the opposite. He's basically going to be used just on third downs this year. They've basically told him that. He's actually kind of just accepted it, which is a little bit sad. So I'm avoiding the Texans. I'm avoiding John Swift, and Jamal Williams is kind of an okay late round flyer, but I wouldn't say he's somebody who's going to be super, interesting for me in fantasy. So I'm kind of avoiding those teams. I would say if there's a team that maybe would interest me, it'd be the Falcons, because Mike Davis, I just don't know if he's going to be the 3-down back. He's the guy that we think he's going to be. So I'm looking behind him. I'm looking at Javian Hawkins still as a potential 3rd-down back and kind of a James White light-ish type of player. And Kadri Allison is kind of an early down back who might get some touchdowns and some touches, because I don't know if Mike Davis is going to hold up over the kind of carries they're going to give him early in the season. So I think some of those overlooked committees might be interesting because, again, nobody's talking about those guys behind Mike Davis as if he's going to get all of the carries, and he's not. So I'm looking at those overlooked committees, so to speak. And then, of course, today we learned Darrell Henderson has an injury. I've been talking about Xavier Jones. He's the main backup there. We knew once Cam Akers was out, they weren't going to rely solely on Darrell Henderson. So I like Xavier Jones as a deep sleeper, but that's also for another video too. So let's finish with one more question here. Should you be drafting guys like Julio Jones, Adam Thielen, what we call the aging veterans who are all of, 30-something years old, in a redraft league, or do you prefer a younger receiver, some of the rookies that are coming into the league? So youth versus experience, where do you lie in that side of the fence?
Mostly the experience side. Maybe that's just because I'm an old guy too. But yeah, I feel like there are 3 huge edges in fan. There are probably more, but the 3 I can think of are rushing quarterbacks, because people still, would rather draft a statue like Tom Brady or Matthew Stafford over a quarterback who has massive rushing upside. Although it's starting to change, but it's not quite there yet. I would say the other big edge is injury discounts, right? Players who coming off an injury that everybody's scared to draft, so their ADP drops 3 or 4 rounds from where they were the year prior, as if suddenly they're going to be, complete dust and not very good. And then, of course, the aging vets, or what you might want to call the shiny new toy syndrome, where everybody gets excited about the rookies and forgets about the guys who are actually good and have been productive in the NFL. And I think the best case of this probably that we've seen so far this year was Corey Davis of the Jets. Everybody raving about Elijah Moore. Everybody wanted to draft Elijah Moore. Nobody talking about Corey Davis. And then through 2 preseason games, Corey Davis looks like he's going to be a league winner. And now all of a sudden everybody's like, oh yeah, that's right. Corey Davis, who's all of 26 years old. But in fantasy football, that's ancient apparently. So no, I think aging veteran discounts, one of the best discounts you can get, especially, look at Adam. I know the question was specifically Julio Jones, Adam Thielen. I'm a little low on Julio Jones, but that's not because of Julio Jones. That's more because of the situation. But like a guy like Adam Thielen, like, come on, what? I get it. Justin Jefferson's a shiny new toy. Justin Jefferson's awesome, but Adam Thielen is still going to be really good. So no, definitely not. Don't worry about aging veterans. I mean, unless it's like, Larry Fitzgerald comes, decides to play this year or something like that. But for most aging veterans, yeah, I lean that way.
Yeah, I mean, if you're considering Larry Fitzgerald at this point, you've already lost. But anyways, I'm right there with you. Maybe this age thing, myself personally. But what has changed for Adam Thielen from last year to this year? Nothing. Wait, did they get another receiver this year in the draft that we should be worried about? No, it's Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen. That is it. That is all they have. He's going to be the solid wide receiver 2 on a team. Maybe they don't pass a ton, but he's going to get nearly all of the target share there besides Jefferson. So why would you discriminate against him? That's ageism, if you ask me. But the rookies are always so overhyped. We know this. So you ask me, Adam Thielen versus Jamar Chase, easy. it's Theilen. Okay, Julio Jones, he's falling apart, right? I get he was injured last year. Injuries happen to young players too. All right, so to me, you shouldn't even worry about the age. You should worry about the situation, right? The projected target share, maybe injury history. But if you're looking at age, to take the younger guy, the older guy, that's not what matters. All right, so I'm not discounting those guys because of age, and I'm not preferring younger player just because they're younger, because that's how we get those busts, the guys that we think are going to be super exciting new players, and they just don't transition to the league well. All right, got some burning questions off our chest. If you have more, I already said this, but check the link down below. Join our Discord if you haven't already. And if you're in there, ask away, right? Just make sure you tag it to Chris and let us know that you have a burning question that you want answered, and we'll try to get to it. All right, thanks for watching.